Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Paint with Sean. So, today we're continuing on the work that we've been doing on the sort of fiery sky mountain depth scene that we've been working on here. Thank you for following along if you've been with us from the beginning video. If not, you can go back and watch those videos and see how we got to where we are. But today we've just picking up where we left off. We've been working on adding the cabin over here. We've got some little rolling hills that we've put in. Added a couple more rocks to the little path that we had created and added a little depth to it so it didn't look quite so watery like a waterfall. Just a couple little touches here. So anyway, we're in a real good place now where we may be able to finish this up today. But again, our goal is just to really enjoy ourselves and kind of tell a story as we go and see what happens. So I've got a real good idea of what I want to do. We're going to finish off some bordering around the water. So this will create our final edge around here. We're going to bring this pathway all the way around down the bottom. And then I want to put a little rock structure over here that will push this layer even farther back. So when we overlap that and have that all the way to the bottom of the canvas, we can have that path sort of go up into the rocks and disappear. And then we might put a nice big tree or something over here. I really enjoy doing that. That was always Bob's thing. Bob Ross, if you haven't been following along, loved his happy trees and your bravery test and all that sort of thing. So we are going to add a few details over here. This is a very plain looking scene. Even in the background is a little bit plain. So we're going to add a few things like a fence and a couple of little shrubberies and things going on to just kind of spice it up like this. We've got a few pieces out here that we're going to leave sort of just kind of like the lay of the land and how it goes naturally. And then as we get closer, we get a little more detail and more involved. So I've got my fan brush here. So we're going to put some white around the edge here. So I'm just going to dip it in some of the water. And just pat it dry a little bit. I just want to thin out some of this white paint a little bit so it's not quite as thick. The thin paint really slides a little bit better. It blends a little bit better than a thick paint tends to. A thick paint usually has a little more texture to it. So I like the fan brush because it gives you a real flat edge if you hold it sideways here. So we're sort of just going to come along. And we don't want to get right up to what we've already painted. We want it to be a little bit below so there's that dark area that contrasts against this little light area here. So we're just going to kind of give it a few strokes, and we don't want this to be exactly perfect, okay? So we want this to sort of blend around and have a little bit of life to it, okay? So water is not perfect. It sort of moves around a little bit. And we can play with this to the degree that we want to. But due to this being a real snowy scene, I do want to have a good amount of water on here, or snow, excuse me. So I'm gonna put a good amount of this going on in here. And you can really use whatever brush. If you just turn this, then you only have to use a little bit of the brush, and you can put a little bit less on there. Okay, so not all of it has to be, these big waves of things, but maybe it's crashing against the rocks, and we can throw a little bit up here, and these things are sort of coming up over the top. And again, sort of the story that you tell about the scene that you're working on sometimes is just as much fun as the actual painting itself. So flip this over here, get a little bit out here, and have some of that come up on top of the ground here. And I'm not super concerned with the corner and down here because most of this is going to be covered up, as well as this corner over here. So we're really only doing just this edge, where it's going to be visible. So we just want to sort of create a little breaks and things going on. Maybe it catches up there and comes along. So again, the thinner you make this, the more still the water will look. All right, so maybe we want to have a little bit of water splashing up over the top, and it's gonna be snow. Okay, so I'm not too worried about making this the thinnest line you've ever seen. Okay, so I'm just going to get a good line here connected, and then we can come in and play with it a little bit. So I've got a thicker brush here, and this is sort of a lighter color. I'm going to keep working with just the straight plain white and put a little bit of detail in it. Now, this brush is not the smallest one that I have. I actually have an even finer tipped brush for some real detail work, but we can do some good stuff with this just to add a few more motionary things. Okay, so when we've got some things coming out, it gives directional travel indication. Okay, and again, a lot of this in the back might be covered up, so that's okay. So we're just going to play with this over here and give it a little bit of motion to it. And these little detail motions, guys, these are some of the things that really take your paintings to the next level, is when you add just these little bits, okay, the little difference makers, right? It's not always like the grand scheme of things and how perfect is it and all that kind of thing. It's these little wisps that really give it some directional travel, right? And so I'm just kind of bringing these all together here, and we'll have a few more going on over here. So we've got maybe a little bit of wave action going. Okay, so you see how these directions that we're pushing on this, right? And again, we can make them closer, right? And you can put a little bit down the backside as well, right? We don't want to kill all the dark. We don't want it to all be even. Okay, so I'm going to put some things out here and kind of extend the water out a little bit. Now, sometimes in the winter, lakes don't always freeze. So it is very possible to have this kind of environment where the water is still moving. Now, in some of these areas where it's a little bit more choppy, you can give it a little more curl to it, and you can make it look as though it's rounding over itself. And we just want to kind of imagine, what would it really look like if we were there? And that's what we're trying to really convey when we go to these paintings. Okay, so maybe we want to have a few coming up there. Again, this is your world. You guys get to make this up as you go. Okay, and now I've got a fairly good light spot here. Maybe this is another break a little farther out, and we're going to indicate that by giving it some downward wave here. Okay, so we just created another little layer within the water just based on how it looked like it was going to flow. Okay, so again, play with this stuff. Don't worry about what you've already done or what you're already good at. Throwing in a little bit of wave is mostly the angles of the water. Okay, so even in over here, if we want to go to something a little bit finer, we can even put in some smaller detail. Okay, so again, I'm just working with the plain white, and the more that you get this wet, the thinner this will be. Okay, so if you sort of roll it in there and pull some of that paint out and just kind of roll the brush in it, hopefully you can see that here, it's almost like ink. And then you can make some real fine things happen. Okay, and it becomes really up to you how you want that motion to come across. Okay, now I don't want to put dots all over the place, but I'm just kind of showing you what the possibilities are here. So as we get some of these finer detailed points in here, it really adds depth to it. Okay, so when we have these real contrasting areas where these streaks are very thin, that's where we really start to see a lot of the motion. Okay, and the same kind of thing, if we wanted to curl over this one a little bit, you can just kind of give it some curl to it. Okay, it will please the eye enough, even if you're not that good at making the exact curl of what the wave would look like. people will pick this up in their own mind. The human mind is amazing in what it can put together. Even if you look at how you read. Okay, reading is not really word breakdowns. Okay, you see a part of the word and you just, oh, it looks like this word, and we assume that it is. This is why spelling is sometimes hard, because we don't actually look at the arrangement of the letters. We look at the bigger picture and we make up the rest. So this kind of thing where we're creating, some layers of some waves going on, okay, the mind will make up the rest. We just have to put some indications of some things, okay? So we're just going to throw in a few difference makers here. Okay, really break this up and keep things kind of fun going on. Okay, and we can put these into your heart's content. And if it ever gets too dark like this, you can always come back with another color, because this is kind of flat. Okay, so we've got a little bit of shoreline going on, but it's all kind of like plain white. So if we grab a little bit of this blue and come back over here to our white, we can dull this down quite a bit so that when we come on there, it's a very light colored blue. Okay, and depending on, the match of the color, this is where you can start to create some extra little indications of things happening that are a different shade. And this is where depth and dynamics really start to come in, is when you add additional colors to it. All right, so one color on top of another doesn't usually do it. It typically takes three colors here. Okay, so again, if we just got a little bit going on in there and some over here in this little wave action, you can make these as light or as dark as you want. Okay, so it really gives it a lot more possibility for movement. So the more you have going on, the easier it is for the mind to sort of step away from that one little piece and look at it as a bigger whole. Okay, so I'm just going to throw a little bit of extra blue color in here going on, just to break up some of this so it's not perfectly white everywhere. All right, that little bit of breakup sometimes is all that it takes to make it look a little more dynamic, like things are really happening. Okay, so I really enjoy rocks for that nature, because you can put so much degree of variation in there that really makes them stand out in a way that, oh wow, that's deep there and that one's sticking out and that kind of thing. So okay, so I'm just going to throw a couple little detail marks in here, really get some of these movement things happening. Okay, so again, we sort of got this coming up against here, because I'm going to bring this path out and around. So we're just kind of putting in some of this water indications going on. Okay, so again, this is all going to kind of be covered up a little bit down here, so we can really just alternate in the colors that we're working with here and what's showing up. And if you want to throw in some darker color, we can do a little playing around with that. And again, this is kind of a bright blue, so if I just touch the black just a tad, okay, then I can pull some of that blue down into that black color, and I can make it quite a dark blue. All right, so maybe you can't see that on this little tiny brush. All right, but I'm just going to put a little bit of streak in here. Okay, you see that? Just that little bit. And that's something that really changes the dynamic of it. Okay, and if we have some coming down here, it just adds that depth of color. Okay. So you can see where these darker lines come in. It really makes it look a lot deeper. So we got that little bit of color going on. Let me throw a couple more of those in here in between. Okay, so you don't really have to go over the top all the time. You can sometimes go in between where the areas are and utilize those dark areas and just sort of highlight them. Okay. All right, so we've got a little bit of water structure going on. Throw a little bit of dark over here on this side just to sort of even this out a little bit. And the darker it is, the closer it usually looks. Okay, so we don't want this to be super dark in the back. We really want this to kind of be a lighter color. Okay. Break up some of these dark white situations. Bright white. A little more on there. There we go. Not quite so. Okay, so we've got some motion, we've got some water going on. So let's bring our little path around here. So this is kind of a combination of yellow, white, and brown. Very little yellow. It doesn't take too much, and it really turns it very yellow. So we're going to do mostly white and brown. Again, a touch of yellow. And we're going to make this dark here and blend it back in. Okay, so we want to make it a darker color and then add some light to sort of bring it back in here. And we want this to sort of get darker as it comes around, as though this is casting a shadow. And then we're going to put a bush over here to sort of break it up and have that path come around all the way down here, and we'll have a couple bushes, and then have a rock structure to kind of finish us off for the time that we've got. So we're doing pretty good today. We'll see how far we get with this. I don't think we'll get finished today. I spent a lot of time on the water. And again, you guys can do this to your heart's content with, really how much you want this water line, going on out here. So the more horizontal your strokes are, the more natural it will look. And again, it creates sort of that motion that it's coming in that direction there. So okay, so we've got a real fiery in motion sort of water situation going on here. All right, and you can throw whatever you want in there. Okay, so things kind of crashing up over here and going this way and all kinds of things going on. So this is, again, totally up to you, and it changes depending on how you do these strokes. All right, so you add a couple little upward things and it looks like it's splashing up against that edge. Okay, so we've got a lot of dynamics going on with the way that this is put together. So I think it looks pretty good. So we'll leave the water here. So I'm gonna rinse my brush here because I do want to use the same one here. I really like the fan brush. These little ones are great for more obviously small detail work, but the fan brush is very versatile. You can do straight lines, you can do big broad areas, you can do just kind of tight little things if you turn it to the corner. So it's a pretty versatile little brush. Okay, so let's get some of our brown going on. All right, I'm going to pull some of that in the middle. And then just a touch of white. I don't want this to be too dark, but I want it to be very noticeably darker. Okay, again, guys, that contrast of dark to light. So not a super dark color, but compared to that, it is. All right. So we're gonna use this one over here and sort of give ourselves this general of a direction. And again, we're just kind of mapping out where the path might be. Okay, and the less directly straight it is, so you can see there's some dynamic to this path where it's not really straight. Okay, oh, we got a little dark there, that's okay. You can always cover up anything that doesn't quite go our way the first stroke. Alright, and again, I'm just kind of mapping out some of the area for this. So I get myself a little more paint. And this is one of the things, I've got this little lip down here, so I've got to lift this up to get all the way in there. Okay. And I'm going to make this path here. Okay, so I've just got a little bit going on there. I need some more paint here. And so this is where I want to start to kind of add a little bit of that yellow back to it. And this darker color is going to hold a little more yellow. So I just want a little bit of that, and then I want to put a little bit of the white in there as well and lighten this up quite a bit so that we can have an over-the-top layer that just indicates that the path is there, right? So we want to start, somewhere here in the middle so we know where our things are. And again, we can pull this path out into the water a little bit more as we need. I don't think I got enough paint here, so I'm going to add to that. And we can just sort of blend this back, okay? So as it comes into this corner, we want it to get lighter. All right, so I'm going to get a little more white here, mix me up a little more paint to work with. Okay, and you guys can just kind of play with this as you want. I'm going to, again, throw a little tad bit more yellow in there, just because we've already got a tinge of the yellow going on over here. So I'm just lightening this up so we can get it closer to the other color going on there. Okay, and again, we're just kind of blending this in. And this little stroke, you kind of just put it in. Okay. And again, we're just making the base outline here. It doesn't have to be exactly, what the thing looks like. And we can add some shrubs and bushes and things like that as we go. So, okay. All right. So we're getting our corner going on here. We get a little more of this dark color. And again, we can sort of go back and forth between the dark and the light because the path isn't going to be one color, right? So it can be a little darker in some places and a little lighter in others. Again, your world. You can do this as you want. But having this variation of colors where it's not the same color everywhere, that's what really creates the depth in things, okay? So these little light to dark areas, that's what really starts to create, again, depth. It's really that simple. Okay, but you gotta be willing to touch it and leave it. That's sometimes easier said than done. Okay, so we can come across with some of this little darker color and blend this in a little more. Okay, and grab a little bit of the whiter color and again create some of this lighter stuff going on. Don't worry about trying to do too many brush strokes either with one load up of paint. It doesn't typically go as far as you'd like it to. Okay, so we can start to really blend this back in because this is a pretty white colored hill that goes down into this dirty brown. So the brush strokes again indicate motion and direction. All right, so this hill, the way that we do the stroke, I guess I can put this down. The way that we do the stroke indicates the direction of the flow of the hill. All right. I just want to cover up this dark spot a little bit more. There we go. Okay. All right. Our hill can kind of flow down this way. And all those sorts of things. All right. So again, we do want the contrast going on here. So I'm going to get my brush washed off here and I'm going to put some more white on this. And we're just going to bring the white down on top of this so that we can really sort of define this path a little better. Okay. That's what I love about these acrylics, just some plain water and you're on your way. So let's get quite a bit of white going on here. We want to do a good bit of cover up. And they do really cover up well, especially when they're have had time to dry and then you paint over it. So, but if you get a thick enough layer of paint, you can really cover up our white hill coming down here. And then we want to sort of create where that actual separation is. So again, I'm going to just grab a little bit of this brown here. And let's start back here so then we can... Okay. And this little differentiation here is what can make it look like it's not quite straight. Okay, we can put a little bush right there or whatever it comes down to be. So throw a little bit of yellow in this. Okay, and we'll just add a little bit of highlight to it. Okay, indication, a little sun to it. Okay. And we're going to hide this all in here anyway with a little bit of... I'm just going to throw a little lightning color on there. Just a little here and there for it. Okay. So we've got our little path here. If we want to drop it down and not make it quite so up the hill, we can make it a little bit less of a path by just bringing the hill down on top of it. Okay, so let me get some more white on here. And we can just bring this down here and make this a little bit less high. Okay, so you can kind of adjust this as you go. And again, we're just playing here. I know you're like, God, can't you just get to the next part? But this is sort of the fun, is kind of playing with it back and forth and seeing what you want to really do with the thing. I mean, sometimes it's easy to visualize it all in the beginning, but sometimes it takes adding a few layers here and there and, you know, adjusting things as you go and getting it to that place where you're really excited with what it looks like. So we've got a good little path coming on down around here. We've got our water sort of smudged out. So now that we've got our path down around the corner here, and again, I want a little bit more of this path right here, so I'm going to throw some of that in. And grab a little bit more of this yellow, a little more of the white, a little more brown. There we go. Alright, so we've got a pretty good indicator going on there. It's a little bit going on. Okay, so let's put our brush in the water, clean this off, and then we're going to come back with our little medium small brush and do a little white touch up on the edges. So this is what's cool, guys. If you ever paint over something that you've already done and you're like, oh man, that was good, I miss it, messed it up or whatever, just paint it again. If you were able to do it once, you can definitely do it again. So we're just going to add a little bit of this white to it, okay, and really make this sort of a clean differentiation between the water and the beach. Okay, so we don't want this to be just straight down the beach, and the longer you paint with the same load of paint, the less it will stay that same color you loaded up. So don't worry about trying to get it all done in one spot. Just come back and get a little more paint so we can get a little upward brush. Okay, so maybe this stuff is hitting the edges and really causing some chaos. We can do the same kind of thing over here. Okay, so we can really kind of paint our own world and how this is coming out here. So, alright, we're just going to throw a little more white in here, get some things going on. And again, I'm going to put a bush over here so I'm not too super worried about much anything going on over here. Okay, so indications are really amazing. What does it kind of look like? Okay, so I just want some of this to come out here, and I really want this to be a nice clean white. All right, and our time is up for today. So we did some good things. Definitely not making major progress all the time, but that's, again, some of the fun is just adding a little bit more here and there as you go. All right, so now we can even pull this little white edge down here and just put a little indication. Okay, it doesn't have to be a ton, just a little bit. Make it look like it's just up against that water, up against that little trail, and we got some doodads coming out here. Okay, so we can just put a little bit in here, and I know I'm over time, so I appreciate your guys' time, and I want to keep your time very sacred here. So I'm going to end it here today. Throw a little bit of my white in here and just kind of loosen things up for this little edge that we got going on over here, and continue along with our painting in the next video. So again, I appreciate your time, and we'll see you in the next one.